Recently, I listened to a group of 4 men scream like little girls about whether it made more sense to have a sword with an arm holding a gun, or a gun with an arm holding a sword. And after getting over the whole, oh would you just shut the fuck up and get on with the Q&A we actually give 2 wanks about phase, I then slowly came around to an idea that I previously considered idiotic and began to ponder the thought in depth. At this point, like any good bad human being would do, I decided to involve other people in this conundrum, and after the argument that followed, we eventually settled on an answer. And I most certainly will not be telling you that now, because that would just ruin all the fun now, wouldn't it? The first bit about working out the answer is looking to history, and whilst you certainly don't see many of these throughout the world, there are a few different swords throughout history that do use inbuilt pistols as a secondary function. Most notably the Norwegian whatever the fuck that is. However, bayoneted assault rifles, machine guns, sniper rifles and stocks are commonplace in armies old and new. So in real life, from a use case, tactical and sensical basis alone, the gun with a sword or bayonet prevails as the victor. But this isn't real life, it's the internet. It's a series of tubes. It's a meta so brilliantly contrived, explaining it is so hilariously impossible that you might as well be explaining quantum theory to your house's population of cockroaches and spiders, and then giving them a test to fill out. For reference, I'd put my money on the cockroaches, partly because I actually researched this scientifically, and partly because they have the word cock in them and that's funny. Let's go with the meme. Yes, this one. If you watch the podcast and are wondering what the hell they were banging on about for about 5 or 10 minutes, well, this is it. The first main issue is that without an arm attached to the really big gun holding a really small sword that is in turn attached to a person that can fire it, or without the arm attached to the sword holding the average size gun, there is no way that they could function. But if we take it at face value and imagine that there is no external input, we must first conclude some sort of answer to the question of an inanimate object's ability to have or gain sentience, or at least some sort of consciousness. And to do so, we have to go further backwards than a French tank and find out what consciousness actually is. Going off of one Reddit user with no scientific credentials at all that I found out about around 4 AM after drinking a rather worrying quantity of coffee, consciousness arises from the movement of energy, is awareness, and is not necessarily self-awareness. This is illustrated in turn by many animals, such as cats or dogs, where they're aware of the fact that they can see and will react in turn to what they see, but don't actually think about themselves, and will do whatever initially comes to mind. This results in animals often seeing themselves in a mirror or window and not fully comprehending the fact that it is them that they are viewing. Whereas people are aware of themselves, what they are, the consequences of their action, and, you know, they understand what a mirror is. So, let's go with the scenario that at some point, a Dr. Mengele level scientist attached an arm to a gun and an arm to a sword, provided the sword with the gun and the gun with a sword, and let's also imagine that suddenly they defied every law of nature in the book and became conscious. At this point, we must start to think realistically. Say, for example, they were on opposite sides of a room and there was a wall in between them. They would have to get across this barrier and would have to use their respective hands to do so. If the sword with the gun wanted to get across, he would simply pull himself over with his hand. Whereas the gun, due to the fact that it's fucking huge, might have quite the hard time. However, due to its increased size, it may not need to move at all because its size also means that it likely uses a much higher caliber of round instead of the sword gun's much smaller caliber. Potentially even one that might be able to say screw your damn rules and blow a hole in the wall and then a subsequent hole in the sword. However, due to the fact that the sword with an arm has a much lower weight and doesn't necessarily have to carry its gun, it may be able to sneak up. Oh, wait a second, they don't have ears. The sword can definitely sneak up on the gun with a sword and will likely chop off the gun's arm while it's distracted shooting at the wall, which will result in the gun with a sword's slow and likely painful death. But if it was a straight fight in the open room, the gun would most definitely win, as it would just keep shooting, and after a certain point it would be statistically likely to hit the sword, killing in the process. But neither of them supposedly have any higher brain function, because when you create a gun with swords and vice versa, you generally don't want them to get hung up on pondering their own existence, and it's rather obvious futility. So they might not even want to kill each other, because if we look at this optimistically, any new animal or human hybrid or abomination of nature such as these might not have an inherent need or want to kill, meaning that this massive battle royale may not even occur. Hell, in a vacuum they may become codependent and stage a coup against their evil human creator and then take over the world. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and one last thing, I really hope that you watch to the end, Avery, because I have a question for you.
Some people call me the space cowboy. Wild West, desperado, rough rider. No, you don't want nada. There's 6 gunning this, brother running this. Buffalo, no.